So we went ahead and bought 2 walnut planks. They're not perfectly book matched, but it turned out that, they're pretty much book matched, so we went ahead and bought them. We're going to make 2 waterfall edges, 2 side tables for chairs. We determined that this is going to be our cutoff side due to the extra work that we would have to epoxy fill this, so we're not going to do that. And also there's some, lippage here, and that's going to just cause sanding problems. I always mark the cutoff piece with an X, so I know that's the cutoff piece. I used a razor sharp pencil to mark that line because the room for error on this project is going to be less than 1/64 of an inch. So we're going to score this line, and then we're gonna cut with a 1/8 saw blade at a 45-degree angle, just enough to nick the bottom of the score, and then it'll break off perfectly in a straight line. Also, make sure that your edges are square. We found out that this was not square, so we went ahead and drew a line. We're going to cut that. That way it lays flat on the floor. Go ahead and break a segment and just use anything as a guide. In this case, I'm using a speed square. Line it up right, and then give it a good score. Not too much pressure on the first one, but just enough to cut through the fibers. Like that. Give it another one. And go slow, because if you go too fast, you'll end up missing the line, because that's a sharp edge. That's all you gotta do. Too easy. Find some good screws with good heads on them, and go ahead and secure your table saw to the table. Extend your table out so you get a more stable surface, and then you're going to take your speed square and you're going to adjust the angle. Then you bring it down, right? Because obviously we're not going to make that cut right there, because it's going to eat 1/8 of an inch off the top. So we bring it just below the surface. So this little point right here, that one right there, is going to graze the very bottom of that line that we drew. And then we'll take our razor blade and just score it till it breaks. Okay, so here you have it. We made the cuts. As you can already see, we missed it by, that's got to be 1/64 of an inch. I don't know if you can measure my fingernail against it. So I want to show you how I set up for these cuts. I marked my 45s. Okay, let's get in closer. And I'm writing this edge right here, that point right there. I'm lining that up with this line, so that little point cuts right here, and it drags the line all the way across. That's why we scored this, so we don't break any fibers up on top. I don't know if you can see that right there, how well it lines up. In addition to that, I'm using my guide. And since things are vibrating and it's chaos when you're cutting, you use additional little tricks like this. You mark that corner right there, and you mark that corner right there, and then you rip it. So I want to show you how close these cuts are. Just look at that line. That is almost perfectly straight. Look at that edge. There's a little burr, a few burrs on there, but for the most part it's almost straight. Those burnt marks are caused by a dull blade, so I did like 2 cuts and it's already dull. Okay, so there's a lesson here. We've actually dulled the blade by 1/28 of 1 inch. And if you can see right there, we knocked off the edge already. So this is definitely next level. Now we need to adjust for that 1/28 of an inch. So I was about to run it through the blade, through the saw one more time, but I said, you know what? Let me just score it. I ran the blade once with not a lot of pressure, and sure enough, pretty much came apart. There it is. Boom, just like that. So a long time ago, I learned that glue is tougher than nails. I accidentally spilled some glue on some planks. It glued together, and then the next morning I wanted to see how tough it was, so I pulled it apart, and it actually tore the wood apart. Like, instead of cracking at the seam. So in this case, we're just using glue. A little bit of pressure, and that's about it. We're using this stuff, fast setting glue, 3 to 5 minutes, and that'll do what we need it to do. What we're gonna do is take a wet sponge and just wet all the wood. That way it raises the grain. And we'll go over it with maybe some 220 or 320.